Anwen Avalon, Water Witch and Priestess here. Today I wanted to talk to you about giving offerings to the water and water spirits and water deities, goddess and gods. So I'm going to first start by saying that I talk about this a little bit in my book, Water Witchcraft, Magic and Lore from the Celtic Tradition. And I talk about some ethical offerings and how to really kind of be mindful of what you are giving as offerings to the water. So now I'd like to just do a little brief history on offerings being given to the water or water spirits. So the Celts and the Romans both often deposited sacred objects or very important objects into bodies of water. We know this through lore, like the Arthurian lore, where Excalibur is cast into the lake. But we know this from archaeological digs as well, because we have found massive amounts of important and expensive objects in the water. Things like coins, even a full chariot in some cases. And then, of course, there's been bog bodies or bodies that have also been deposited into the water, perhaps as sacrifice, and there are animals as well. Now, in our modern period, we're not going to do things like take our car and drive it into the lake, or steal our neighbor's horse and take that and, take the horse down to the lake. That's animal cruelty. Don't do that. So let's talk about how we can pull from the past and inform our present. So the Romans, they would put coins, gemstones, and even carved effigies in sacred places as water offerings or depositing into the water. Later, in the 1800s, we still find some of these practices being practiced by the local people, brought down through oral and folk traditions. And one such case is the image of a frog, or an effigy of a frog, which is a fertility symbol, being placed at a church or near a church in order to ask for fertility to be bestowed on the woman that was looking to get pregnant. And so that is a remnant of things from the past where perhaps effigies were carved and done in the same way. Perhaps I wanted healing for my friend, and so I may have a person carve an effigy, or I may do it myself, an image in the likeness of her, and then have that deposited into the water asking for healing. Pins have also, like a straight pin, have also been deposited into water, oftentimes for receiving healing, but in other cases it was bent and it was for a negative reason. But I don't want to talk about that right now. I've mentioned coins a lot, and this was something that is actually still done today. We see this with remnants in our magical fountains, where you find the big fountain in town square or, in the middle of the city, and you see tons and tons of coins in the fountain, and, we throw it in, we make a wish. But this is, again, it's a remnant of what used to take place, which was giving the gift, the offering, as part of an exchange or reciprocity between you and the spirit. Now, we know that mermaids are also connected to treasure and liking and wanting to hoard treasure, and we see this over and over and over again in folk stories of mermaids who either entice a sailor to come and look for treasure, shows them treasure, or there's a story in my book about a mermaid that's captured by a captain, a sea captain, and brought back and put in his lake or in his pond on his property where she lived. And she was there for a very long time, couldn't get out until the old sea captain passed away. And then it just so happened that two young men were walking by, and she entices and says, "Hey, come and look at my treasure." And, they can see some of the treasure, but by the time they get into about here, it's too late. She's got them. So, that's mermaids are often connected to goddesses, and there's a fine line between the mer goddess and the mermaid, and so both the goddess and the mermaid can take on that nature of of not only having the gold, but of enticing people to take it. It's part of the allure and the pull of the mysterious mermaid. Now, in Sulis's temple, now Sulis is a Celtic water goddess associated with the thermal springs and the sun. And in her temple, there were found curse tablets, of course, but effigies and pieces of jewelry, coins from the Celts and the Romans, and many, many cabochons, which are flat stones. It's a stone that has a flat bottom and the rounded top, and they're often set similar to these rings here. In fact, that would be a cabochon right there. And so there were many of those in stones like garnet and amber, carnelian, and stuff that were really popular at the time frame, found in the water drainage systems. Now, bringing that into the modern period, well, if 1,000 witches take a quartz point and throw it in a lake, we're going to have a lot of quartz points in a lake. So be careful about what you're choosing and spend time in the natural environment and find out what you can add to the environment as an offering that doesn't disturb the environment around. For example, on the west coast here at the beach, we have a ton of quartz pebbles that wash up. And so I often collect those, and those can be brought back to your home temple. They can be charged with all your other points and power crystals and cleansed. And then the next time you go back to the beach, they can be deposited. You can make sacred symbols and empower them with energy by drawing in the sand, by using stones that you find on the beach to create patterns, and same thing with driftwood. You can make sacred symbols such as the pentagram or runes or the choku-rei symbol for Reiki healers. And you can add this energy and this positive, no impact offering back to the water. Now, I'm sure you're thinking like, I'd really love to take flowers because flowers are so beautiful and I would love to give those to the water. And that's great. And I have thought the same thing myself, except it really hit me one day when I was walking down the beach and there were all of these mushy flowers with stems. And I could tell that they had been bought from the local grocery store. They were neon pink and green and blue. Flowers don't exist in those colors. And so what happened was this person doing their ritual, thinking, having great intentions, picked up a bouquet of flowers at the store and thought, these are beautiful, these are beauty, I will gift beauty back to the water. And what they did was, with all good intentions, put chemicals into the water. So, if you are interested in giving flowers to water, here are some ways that you can be more ethical about it. Number 1, grow your own flowers. You can buy a bouquet of flowers for about $15 at the store. You can also buy a rose bush from your local Home Depot or local garden store for anywhere from about $12 to, well, there are some roses that are $50, but $12 to $25 is a really good price. And that gives you roses over and over and over. And you might be thinking, but I live in an apartment, I can't have roses. Wrong. Roses grow really well in pots. If you happen to be in a desert climate, it is a little bit of a different story. And so that you're the exception to this particular rule, but roses can be grown in the desert as well. And if you live in an apartment in the desert and you cannot do a rose, I'm sure that you have a neighbor or a friend that can, or even your mother's house. You might be able to plant something there. So consider growing your own roses. Once you're growing them, do not add any chemicals. No Roundup, no pesticides, no Miracle Grow. Just compost your eggshells, your coffee grinds, your your leftover vegetable scraps, compost them and add them to your rose bush. That is a good way for you to be able to give these beautiful representations of just pure beauty and almost perfection back to the water. You give the gift of the softness, the petals, the scent. And then when you're giving the roses or flowers that you've grown, then you're also giving the work that you've put into it. And it doesn't harm the water. Now, you don't want to be doing this every day. Please don't take like a dozen roses down to the ocean every day. Even if they fall into what I've just told you, we're just going to clog up the waterways. If you really want to do daily offerings, and perhaps you walk the beach or you walk a riverbank every week or day, take a trash bag. This is the positive impact offering. And positive impact offerings are probably the best type you can give because they're just giving positive impacts to the environment. You are not adding anything to the environment. And there's two ways that you can do positive impacts. One is to remove stuff from the environment that would harm not only the water, the creatures, and the local flora and fauna that surround your body of water. And so taking trash is wonderful. Take it right to the landfill or even to your home trash where you know it's going to go right from your home trash onto the truck, onto the landfill. So that's one way of doing it, is by actually removing negative things from the environment. Another way, as we've a little bit talked about this before, is this not adding anything foreign. And so that's when you work with the local environment. You charge those quartz pebbles and you make that sacred symbol out of the driftwood and that kind of stuff. There are other options that you can do as well, especially if you're doing long-term work. Say that you find a really nice piece of driftwood at the river. Perhaps you take that home and for 3 or 6 moon cycles, you work with it and you carve a different symbol of power or healing or whatever it is that you're working on that driftwood. And then on the very last one, you go and you take it back and you deposit it back exactly where you found it. And the only change to it is that you have hand carved the symbols into this wood, which will then be taken back into the water and taken somewhere else. Perhaps someone will find it that needs that healing, or perhaps it'll rest in the perfect spot where it needs that energy. Even if it just sits at the bottom of the water, every bit of water that passes over it absorbs those symbols, and over time it can help contribute to healing the environment. Coins, if you want to give coins, there's a really great way to do this as well. And this takes place as an offering in your home temple, not as an offering out in the local environment. So in your home temple, perhaps you decide that you want to give coins because you practice a Greco-Roman practice, or ancient Gaul or Celts or ancient Romans or Norse inspire you, and so you want to kind of pick up some of these things where you would perhaps put an effigy or a coin. So in this case, let's talk about the coins first. So the coins and pins would be done at your home temple. And what you would do here is every time you give an offering, you may have a special dish and you would put the coin in there. And then after a while, after you have, $5 or $10 or $100, whatever the number is, you can then take that and donate it. And there are so many wonderful places to donate. You can donate to helping restore the Roman baths. They're always doing excavations there. You can donate to some of the ocean conservatory projects. You can donate to Sea Shepherd and any of the companies that are actively working on helping the water or even furthering the anti-pollution goal, and looking up some of those really neat new technologies that are being done right now and seeing if you can't donate to their cause as well. And you were thinking, oh, what is $5 going to do? It's an offering. It's what you can give. And so if you can give $5 because you did a quarter every week for, however many weeks, then you can, that is still honorable. You don't have to have $1 million to make an impact. $5 makes a lot. And if 100 people send in 5, then there is a change. So don't think that your offerings are too small or insignificant. Even the smallest little bit helps, whatever your cause is. Now let's talk about effigies. All right, so there are ways to work with effigies like with water magic, that like our ancestors did. First off, you're not going to be crafting anything out of synthetic polymer clay, and you're not going to be doing it out of any like weird plasticky things. So what you can do is you can take the mud that you find at the bank of the river and create a shape, an effigy of that, and put the tag lock inside. This also works at the beach, especially when the tide is low, so that when the tide comes in, it will then take the effigy out. And if the idea is healing, then it will take that likeness of the person out to the ocean for their spiritual healing. This is a little bit like poppet magic. You can also do this with snow. And there are places that actually sell local clay to artists where it has just been dug straight from the ground and given to the artist to create. And there is usually no chemicals or dyes or anything attached to it. So if you're able to find, or you have a friend that happens to be a potter, then you may be able to work with some of their clay as well. And in this case, just double check and make sure that they're, where they got it from, is it natural, and look and see if there's anything added. If you're free and clear, make your effigies, and instead of baking them after they dry, you take them out and you deposit them into the water. I would recommend this more in fresh water than in the ocean, because you find a lot of the riverbanks are already coated or made out of a natural clay or clay-like substance, where the ocean is often very much more sand, and you're not going to find a lot of clay there. So just be really mindful of your environment and what you're putting in the water. Now, at sacred wells and springs, there's a very old practice using Clootie or Clootie, which are strips of fabric. And you may see a lot of these at the holy wells, and you may see a hawthorn tree or another sacred tree that is dripping with all of these beautiful ribbons. Now, if you decide to partake in this, first off, make sure that you loosely tie the knot around your Clootie so that it gives the tree room to grow and expand without strangling it. If you use a synthetic fabric, what happens is it stays and it strangles the tree branch as it gets bigger. And so you don't want to do that. You want to use only things like silk, cotton, and we're talking unbleached silk and cotton, which you can usually get at your local fabric store. You can probably purchase online, and this way you are using fabric that you know will disintegrate and won't harm the environment. And you can partake in the cloudy rituals this way. In this particular case, people are often doing prayers where they're connecting to the local spirits or goddess by putting the energy of the prayer into the ribbon. Now, this goes back even further with, it used to be used for healing, where the strip of fabric was actually ripped from the person's clothing, dipped in the holy water, and tied back on for a time. There's other versions of this. Sometimes they're placed under a rock, impaled on a hawthorn tree. If you have the choice to tie or impale, always impale your rags. And always, 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 always pick natural fabrics. We'll do another video on Clootie, and there's a whole bunch of information in the book on Clootie as well. But if you are participating in that, just be really mindful of your fabric and make sure that whatever you introduce into the environment doesn't add chemicals and will decompose. If you're really uncomfortable adding fabric to a local environment, try charging the local leaves that you find there, or braid a strip of grass instead and dip that in the water and partake in the Clootie ritual with a leaf or grass or something along the lines of that, which you know it will disintegrate very soon. The good news is the original uses of the Clootie were using the natural fabrics specifically so they would decompose in the environment, especially for healing rituals where it was believed that the illness would then go into the rag, and then the rag would then go onto the tree or under the rock, and then as the rag decomposed, so would the disease decompose out of the person's body. This also works well with emotional and spiritual healing, as I find as well. So like I said, we'll do a video on Clootie, but until then, if you're interested in learning more about them, there is a bunch of information on Clootie, how to create them, how to use them in your magic and spell work, and in the book. So thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. There will be more water videos coming soon. I also have dancing videos, belly dance videos on here. So if you're interested in watching a mermaid themed performance or sacred dance to a water goddess, make sure you subscribe, and we'll be coming back with more water videos soon. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.